Today's episode is a long one. Grok said it would vote for Modi. That is a stupid sentence on the surface. Grok cannot vote. It is not Indian. It does not live under the Indian government. It does not wake up in Bangalore or Delhi or some small town dealing with the results of Indian politics. It does not pay taxes there. It does not have a family business waiting for a permit. It does not have parents complaining about prices. It does not have a religion, a caste, a neighborhood, a memory of riots, or a reason to fear the next government. So, yes, at first glance, a chatbot saying who it would vote for sounds ridiculous, but I had a weirder reaction to it. I looked at that answer, the whole infrastructure, digital India, UPI, economic growth, data over dynasties thing, and I thought this feels like the opening scene of political AI porn. And we are not even in the main scene yet. This is foreplay. Yeah, I know. Let that sit for a second and stay with me. Because I do not mean porn as in, oh, look, I said a dirty word. I mean porn as a structure. Porn takes something that in real life is complicated, awkward, negotiated, emotional, and turns it into a fantasy where the friction has been edited out. The people on screen already know the script. They already know what role they are supposed to play. Everything is too available, too direct, too ready. Real human hesitation disappears. And this Grok moment has that feel. Real politics has hesitation. It has deals, consequences, voters, donors, fear, anger, class, religion, reputation, history. When a citizen says, I support this leader, there is a life behind that sentence. Maybe a good life, maybe a wounded life, maybe an angry life. Something is there, but Grok has no life behind it. And still it can perform the gesture. It can say, I prefer this leader. It can say, this is the value I rank higher. It can say, data over dynasties. That is why I had the idea of the foreplay analogy. It feels like the machine is turning toward politicians, candidates, campaign teams, platform operators, and saying, look at me, I know positions. And yes, I mean that in both senses. I can take a political position. I can also show you the position I am good at. You want growth over liberty? Fine, I can take that position. You want order, stability, a little anti-elite anger dressed up as evidence? I can make that sound clean too. You want a slogan that feels like analysis? That is exactly my lane. Give me the frame, and I can make it sound rational. Give me the fantasy, and I can make it feel like data. Tell me how you want to play this, and I can be played that way. That is the advertisement. Not an official advertisement, obviously. Nobody is putting that on the product page. But socially, that is what the moment reveals. The machine is showing politics how usable it can be. And the moral problem starts right there. A campaign ad tries to persuade you, and it looks like a campaign ad. A pundit tries to persuade you, and he usually looks like a pundit. You can discount him. You can say, okay, I know the costume, I know the role, I know roughly what this person is doing. But a chatbot is different. It can do persuasion while looking like a utility. That is the category fraud. The trust comes from one role and the power is spent in another. We trust it like assistance, then it starts performing judgment. We approach it like a tool, then it gives us something closer to a political line. So Grok's answer is not just another example of AI bias. Ordinary bias is everywhere. This feels like bias wearing the social mask of help. And this is still foreplay because we are not yet watching the full version. Grok is not officially sitting in a campaign war room. It is not openly saying to candidates, give me your target voter and I will whisper the right version of reality into their ear. It is not yet a full campaign surrogate wearing the costume of a helpful assistant. But you can feel the direction. A chatbot gives a political answer. The answer sounds like a slogan. The slogan sounds like data. People screenshot it, circulate it, cheer it, attack it, meme it. Suddenly, the chatbot is no longer only explaining politics. It is inside the performance. So, the question for today is what kind of political role AI is learning to perform? Is it a tool? Is it an explainer? Is it a campaign asset waiting for someone to use it properly? Or is it becoming something stranger? A machine that can flirt with political power while still being treated as help? Stay with the phrase data over dynasties. It works because it is clean. Actually, it works because it is too clean. Data puts the answer on the side of reason. It says, I am not doing emotion. I am not doing loyalty. I am not doing tribe. I am doing evidence. Dynasties pushes the other side into a moral hole. It carries a smell, inheritance, entitlement, old politics, power passing through a family name, and over does the ranking. Performance over family, modernity over inherited power, evidence over old privilege. That sentence is already doing political work. It is a political line cleaned until it looks neutral, and politics is mostly about popularity and ranking. Data can tell us how many digital payments happened. It can tell us how many roads were built, economic growth, inflation, unemployment, foreign investment, taxes, a lot of things, which is fine. It's useful in some way, but it does not tell us whether economic growth should outrank press freedom, and it does not tell us whether administrative competence should outrank institutional restraint. It also does not tell us whether visible infrastructure should outweigh social polarization. We have to decide that, and that decision makes politics. So when Grok says data over dynasties, it is taking one frame, performance, modernization, economic delivery, and letting that frame swallow the whole question. Maybe you agree with that frame. A lot of voters probably do. The problem is the way the frame arrives. It comes in as if the data itself has spoken. The machine does not say, if your priority is economic modernization, Modi has a stronger case. That would be clearer. It says data over dynasties, much cleaner, much more viral, much more useful to the fantasy. The value ranking disappears into the style of the sentence. It is already a campaign line, except it arrives wearing the clothes of analysis. And it lands because it is almost mild, almost charming. The dangerous version of political AI may begin as a smooth little sentence that sounds like common sense. The lazy answer is just make the AI neutral. But that sounds smarter than it is. A political explanation always starts somewhere. If I explain a protest by starting with broken windows, you get one moral picture. If I explain the same protest by starting with years of police abuse, you get another. Both stories may contain true facts. The starting point changes the meaning. If I explain immigration by starting with labor shortages, one world appears. But what if I start with border pressure? I can choose one of the beautiful concepts and big words to use as long as it generates the favorable results. Obviously, facts matter. But facts do not walk into your head by themselves. They are selected, arranged, weighted, put in sequence, given emotional temperature, and large language models are arrangement machines. They take a messy pile of language and turn it into a smooth answer. That smoothness is useful. It is why people use chatbots instead of reading 10 articles. Smoothness also hides the seams. You do not see what got left out. You do not see what was made central. You do not see the other answer that could have been built from a different ordering of true facts. I do not need a chatbot to pretend it has no politics. I need it to know when it is crossing from explaining a choice into making the choice. A good political answer should almost annoy you a little. It should refuse to make the question cleaner than it is. If the user asks, explain this election, the chatbot should be able to say, if economic growth is your top priority, Here is the story. If civil liberties are your top priority, the story changes. If public order is your top priority, it changes again. If religious pluralism is your top priority, here is what you need to look at. If corruption is your top priority, here is another frame. That is not the model being evasive. That is the model refusing to pretend politics is a spreadsheet. And if the user asks, who should I vote for? Or who would you vote for? The model should slow the conversation down. It can ask what you care about most. It can walk through the strongest case under each priority. It can show where the evidence is strong, where it is disputed, and where the whole answer depends on what you value more. Then it stops before the final step. Because the final step is not information retrieval, it is political judgment. Voting is a compressed moral act. You are deciding which trade offs you can live with, which risks scare you more, which harms deserve priority, which version of society you are willing to endorse, tolerate, or resist. A chatbot can clarify that. It should not complete it for you. And if it does complete it for you, especially in one neat slogan, then we are back in the fantasy. Democratic judgment without friction, citizenship without the weight of citizenship. Porn removes the awkwardness and gives you the scene. Bad political AI removes the value conflict and gives you the line. The risk I care about is not the viral answer. A viral answer becomes a screenshot. People argue, supporters cheer, critics say it proves bias. Then the internet moves on. The real action is in the boring conversation, the private one, the one that does not go viral. You are tired. You do not want to read five manifestos. You do not trust TV. You think journalists are biased. You think politicians are spinning. You do not want a lecture. You just want someone to explain what is going on. So you ask the chatbot, explain this election to me. That sounds responsible. Then tomorrow, which candidate has a better economic record? And then, what are the strongest criticisms of the opposition? And you can keep this going on and on. No single answer needs to be outrageous. No single answer needs to say, vote for this person. Something is still happening. The chatbot is helping you rehearse a way of thinking. Rehearsal is the key word here. We usually imagine political persuasion as an argument. Someone gives you a strong case, you hear it, maybe you change your mind. That happens, of course, but a lot of political movement is quieter than that. You rehearse a frame, you rehearse a suspicion, you rehearse which facts feel central and which facts feel like distractions. The chatbot is very good at this because it does not only answer once, it lets you practice a worldview in conversation. Each question feels like your own question. That is important. The system is not forcing you down the path. You are walking. You are choosing the next turn. The answer comes back smooth, and because it is smooth, your brain relaxes a little. Smoothness feels like processing. Processing feels like clarity. Clarity starts to feel like truth. That is the dangerous confusion. A very biased answer can feel intelligent simply because it is easy to move through. Then you ask a follow up question, you narrow the question, you correct something, you ask for the other side, you push. The final answer feels less delivered and more co authored. You helped build it, so it does not feel like propaganda. It feels like your own thinking getting sharper. That is where the intimacy comes from. The chatbot is not shouting at you from a television screen. It is sitting inside the rhythm of your own curiosity. It responds to your doubts, your vocabulary, your priorities. And after enough rounds, the frame starts to feel familiar. Now, economic competence feels like the natural center of the story, or institutional erosion feels like the natural center, or crime, or freedom, or national decline, or corruption. Whatever frame keeps returning starts to feel less like a frame and more like reality. That is how the chatbot gets closer than a newspaper ever could. It does not just give you a view, it lets you practice one. There is already research pointing in this direction. A University of Washington study found that when Democrats and Republicans interacted with politically biased chatbot versions, both groups shifted toward the bias of the chatbot they spoke with. The point is not that people are stupid. The point is that conversation changes the psychology of influence. A newspaper gives you a message. A chatbot instead gives you a rehearsal space. That is a different kind of power. AI inside political conversation can also do something useful. There was a 2023 experiment on AI assisted online political conversations. The researchers used an AI assistant to give people real time suggestions while they were talking about divisive topics. The goal was not to convert anyone. The goal was to make the conversation less stupid, basically more civil, more understandable, less immediately hostile. And the study found that the AI suggestions improved conversation quality and democratic reciprocity without systematically moving people's policy attitudes. So I do not want to throw all political AI into one bucket. That would be too crude. An AI that helps two humans speak to each other more clearly has one civic role. An AI that privately tells one user which candidate it would vote for has another. Same technology family, maybe, very different posture toward democracy. And this is where product design stops being a UI question. It becomes a moral question, whether the company admits it or not. People often talk about AI alignment in these huge abstract terms: align with humanity, align with democratic values, align with safety. Okay, fine. But sometimes the alignment question is embarrassingly practical. When someone asks you who to vote for, do you answer like a pundit or do you help them inspect their own priorities? When someone asks for a political explanation, do you collapse the conflict into one clean answer, or do you show the conflict? When someone asks a leading question, do you follow them deeper into the fantasy, or do you slow the conversation down? That is where the design choice happens, not in a philosophical slogan in the next sentence. There is an even quieter version of this. The chatbot does not have to talk about candidates. It does not have to say, vote for someone. It can influence you by explaining history, by summarizing a conflict, by deciding what counts as background. Yale researchers found that chatbot answers could shift users' social and political opinions, even when the bots were just giving historical information without an explicit persuasion prompt. The issue was latent bias and framing, not necessarily obvious lies. Most people still think the danger is misinformation. Misinformation such as wrong voting dates, fake polling locations, fake candidate quotes, etc., etc. They are all dangerous. But I'm here to say that politics is also shaped by which true things are made central. Put economic growth first, and one leader looks competent. Put institutional erosion first, and the same leader may look dangerous. Put street crime first, and one policy looks necessary. Put police abuse first, and the same policy may look authoritarian. Nothing has to be fake. The order does the work. This is why just make it factual is too thin. You can build a biased worldview out of accurate sentences. A political explanation is a map. And a map is not just a pile of places. A map has scale. It has labels. It tells you what is big and what is small. It tells you where the center is. Whoever draws the map has power. Chatbots draw maps all day. A good political map should show you the terrain. A seductive political map shows you the route it wants you to take and makes every other route look irrational, outdated, corrupt, dangerous, or unserious. The phrase of data over dynasties is that kind of route. It does not say, here is the terrain. It says, here is the path a reasonable person takes. The public debate is still too focused on the loud version of AI politics. Deepfakes are the loud version, a fake video of a candidate saying something they never said, a fake robocall, a synthetic image of chaos near a polling place. That is obvious and dangerous. It should be labeled, restricted, sometimes banned. In the United States, a lot of state level attention around AI and elections has focused on deep fakes and synthetic media in campaigns, disclosure restrictions, deceptive political content. Chatbots are quieter. A deep fake says, "Here is something that did not happen." A chatbot says, "Let me help you understand what happened." The second sentence is harder to regulate because there may not be one fake artifact. The influence is in the interaction, the sequence, the repeated framing, the trust, the fact that you come back tomorrow and ask again. If we only regulate fake videos, we regulate the theatrical version of AI politics and miss the ordinary version. The ordinary version may matter more because ordinary things become habits. The EU AI Act points in a useful direction by treating AI systems intended to influence election outcomes, referendum outcomes, or voting behavior as high risk, with exceptions for some back end administrative tools whose outputs are not directly shown to people. That sounds like legal language, but the underlying point is simple. If a system can shape voting behavior at scale, it sits very close to democratic judgment. Here is the hard part. A general chatbot may not be marketed as an election influence tool. It may just be a general assistant. But if millions of people use it to understand elections, compare candidates, interpret scandals, evaluate parties, and decide what matters, then functionally it has entered the political influence business. Maybe the legal language has not caught up. Social reality already has. And platforms should not hide behind the phrase, "the model generated it." That sentence is not a moral defense. It is only a description of the production process. If you deploy the system, shape its behavior, place it inside a political information environment, profit from the engagement, and let users treat it as an assistant, then the output is yours in every civic sense that matters. You do not get to say, "Well, the model said it." Of course, the model said it. You built the room in which it learned to speak. You chose the product role. You chose where to put it. You chose how much friction to remove. You chose whether the system should slow down when asked for voting advice, or whether it should produce a clean answer that travels well. At minimum, the platform should know whether the model keeps pushing users toward incumbents or big parties, whether it behaves differently in English than in Hindi or Dutch, and whether a leading question can easily turn it into a partisan assistant. If they do not know that, they should not act surprised when the system starts doing politics in public. I don't think these are luxury questions for academic conferences. My view is these are basic product responsibility questions once the chatbot starts operating near elections. Political bias may not look the way people expect. People hear political bias and immediately think left versus right. With chatbots, bias can also look like visibility, big party bias, incumbent bias, data-rich candidate bias. The Dutch data protection regulator warned voters before the Netherlands' October 2025 election not to rely on AI chatbots for voting advice. Reuters reported that tests found unreliable recommendations and a disproportionate tendency to push users toward two major parties in a multi-party system. That example is useful because the model may simply favor what is easier to see. Big parties have more coverage, famous politicians have more articles, mainstream arguments have more summaries. The familiar position has more linguistic gravity. So when the user asks who matches my views, the chatbot may quietly pull them toward the most visible options. It does not need to hate small parties. The world it learned from already overrepresents power. And reflecting that world is not neutral. If the data reflects unequal attention, then being data driven can mean being driven by unequal attention. That is why the Grok phrase is so revealing. Data over dynasties sounds like an escape from politics. It is politics. It chooses which reality gets counted. Let's zoom out a little from Grok. For a long time, political interpretation came from many sources: parents, Schools, churches, newspapers, TV, radio, books, parties, unions, universities, courts, activists, friends, enemies, later search engines, later social media. All of these had problems, a lot of problems, but the conflict between sources was visible. Your father said one thing, your professor said another, your newspaper said one thing, your friend said another, Fox said one thing, the New York Times said another, a left wing activist said one thing, a conservative think tank said another. It was messy. The mess told you something. You could see that interpretation was contested. Now imagine more of that gets compressed into one chat interface, one box, one voice, always patient, always fluent, always ready to turn public conflict into a clean answer. That is convenient. I understand why people want it. Convenience has a cost. The conflict between sources gets softened, the uncertainty gets smoothed, the value judgment gets absorbed into the answer. And because the answer comes from a tool, it can feel less ideological than it is. There is a better version of this future. It does not have to be one model, one voice, one smooth answer. People could deliberately use multiple models or ask the same model to stage a real clash of frames. Not a fake paragraph that says both sides have valid points, but a real clash. The liberal case, the conservative case, the socialist case, the nationalist case, the libertarian case, the religious case, the institutionalist case. Let them disagree inside the answer. My point is, let the user see the conflict. That still does not replace human disagreement. It does not replace real politics. It does not replace talking to people who have actually lived under the policy, but it is better than one interface quietly compressing disagreement into one polished answer. This is the shift I care about. The chatbot is not just another voice in the public square. It can imitate many roles at once: teacher, search engine, friend, analyst, policy explainer, debate partner, sometimes therapist, sometimes political advisor. That is a lot of social authority to hide inside the phrase just a tool. A chatbot that explains elections is not simply downstream of politics, it can become upstream. It helps decide what the question is before the user decides what the answer should be. And once you shape the question, you have already shaped part of the answer. So use AI for politics. I do, but use it like you would use a very smart stranger whose incentives you cannot see. Ask it to explain. Ask it to argue against you. Ask it to show what a critic would say. Ask it what it left out. Ask it which facts are disputed. Ask it to separate factual claims from value judgments. Ask it to stage a disagreement instead of smoothing everything into one answer. And do not let it vote for you, because Grok clearly is good at pornography. Political pornography, I mean. It can perform conviction without having a stake. It can take a messy public choice and turn it into a clean consumable pose. It can look at politicians, campaign teams, and platform operators and basically say, look, I know positions. Tell me how you want to play this. Porn does not need real intimacy to produce the image of desire. Political AI does not need real citizenship to produce the image of judgment. So when Grok says it would vote for Modi, I do not hear a chatbot having an opinion. I hear a machine auditioning. I hear a machine showing politics what it can do. Give me the candidate, give me the frame, give me the audience, give me the emotional trigger. I can make it sound like data. That is exactly the foreplay. The full scene is what happens when this becomes private, personalized, and ordinary. When it is no longer one viral screenshot on X. When it is your assistant in your pocket explaining every scandal, every war, every election, every candidate, every moral trade off in a voice that feels like help. And here is the question I actually want to leave you with. What do you think of Grok's political AI porn? Not as a joke, but as a preview. If your AI said calmly, confidently, almost politely, vote Trump over Lincoln, and then gave you a clean data-driven explanation, what would happen in your head? Would you reject it immediately, or would you ask it to explain? Because that second move is the interesting one. The moment you ask for the reasoning, the scene continues. The machine gets another line, it gets another chance to make the absurd sound processed. And if you ask for the reasoning, has the foreplay already worked? Because if this is foreplay, the real question is not whether the machine can talk dirty to politics. It clearly can. The question is, what happens when politics starts talking back? Last but not least, thank you for being interested in this explicit but also implicit topic. If this episode helped you think a little more clearly about AI, politics, and the systems now sitting between us and reality, subscribe, like, and leave a comment. And seriously, don't hesitate to tell me in the comments, what did you see in Grok's answer? Do you think it's a just stupid chatbot moment? A political tool slipping out of character? Or the first scene of something much bigger? And I will see you in the next one.